It is our second week in our series, A Better Home. Yesterday, we were sitting at home, and one of my sons, I won't name his name, I think it's unfair. I know a pastor that would if he uses his kids in the sermon intro, he'd pay them money. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to use them and not name them, and I don't know them anything. Well, one of my sons was watching basketball on ESPN, and I come in, I'm like, could we watch something else? It was Duke in Miami. First of all, we're not from Durham, North Carolina, nor are we from Miami, Florida. I don't care about Duke in Miami. But he wanted to watch the game, and I was like, there's other things going on. Isn't there I wanted to see when the playoff game was, but we still had a couple hours. And I was like, okay, fine. Who are you cheering for, man? And he's like, I'm going to cheer for the team that's losing. Like, if they're behind, I'm going to cheer that they score. And then when they get up, I'll cheer for the other team to make sure they score. And I thought to myself, I don't know if he's thought forward ahead to the end of the game, but he's going to be sorely disappointed. No matter who wins and who loses. I mean, he's going to be cheering for the team with the lowest score at the end of the game. And I'm like, I didn't say this. I thought, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment at the end. And then I thought to myself, I wonder what he's going to do when there's a tie. Who do you cheer for then? Lo and behold, a few moments later, there was a tie. And he goes, I don't even know who to cheer for now. And I said, here's what you do. You pray that nobody gets hurt. Just everyone play nicely, nobody gets hurt. That's what you do when you have moms who have kids play each other. I don't want everyone to get along. So that's what I told him to do. But when I think about his perspective on this game, the issue is he didn't have a dog in the fight. Like I said, we're not from Durham, North Carolina. We're not Duke fans. We're not Miami Hurricane fans. We're not from, he just was there. So was he disappointed at the end of the game? Yeah, because he was cheering for the team that was losing, but at the same time, he really wasn't disappointed because he really didn't care. From his perspective, it was just these two foreign teams, and it was just passing a Saturday afternoon by. But it reminded me the fact that we have no roots in either of these communities, that we have no background with any of these institutions about last week's message. You remember last week's message? The big idea last week was this, that, would we have it? Nope. When you live in light of your future home, it changes how you approach your present home. When you live in light of your future home, and we talked about how when we live in light of the better home that is to come, it changes how we live in this place at this time. Now, the idea last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, when we introduced this sermon series, is we're going to talk about different aspects of life because your perspective, living in light of your future home, changes everything about how you live your life on this home, how you view God, how you view yourself, how you view others. And today we're going to talk about relationships. So I'm going to invite my wife. She's our group's pastor here, and she's going to come up here in a moment. But let me give you a couple of phrases that you hear about relationships, what you hear about the church, and about living life together around Radiant. First of all, there's the phrase that you've heard me say a number of times, one of my favorite phrases. It's actually kind of a guiding principle, and I think it's set somewhat of the culture here at Radiant because I've heard people say it back to me, and I'm thinking, oh, this thing's clicking. It actually belongs to D.A. Carson, who's a New Testament scholar, who says this, that the church is a band of natural-born enemies who love each other for Christ's sake. Natural-born enemies. We came into this world selfish, self-centered, and God has this bright idea to put us all together as selfish, self-centered people, changed and rescued, but still in the process of being changed, still not yet arrived, and he puts us together. The fact that we are in this room together, the fact that those of us who call Radiant home, I understand not everyone does that, the fact that we are at Radiant together is not because we chose one another. It's not like we came in and said, I like that person, I like these people. I'm convinced that God has chosen us. We are family because God has chosen us, and he's placed us together like adopted children. We love each other for Christ's sake. We love each other because of what he's doing in our life. And let's be honest, relationships in general, from a perspective of our future home, our better home, relationships and church relationships in particular, they can be messy. And that's why we have other phrases like grace is the face that love wears when it meets in perfection, because we realize the grace we have received and we're able to love and show grace to others. So that's one side of the coin of the language we use about church here, that we're natural born enemies who love each other for Christ's sake. So when there is the ugly side rearing its head. When there is difficulty, when there is tension with people, we can say, hey, you know what? Sometimes that happens, but it's an opportunity for me to grow, and it's an opportunity for God to be glorified by what happens now. Now, the flip side of the coin is this. Not only are we natural-born enemies, but and God put us together. Why did he put us together? We believe here at Radiant that spiritual growth happens in the context of community. Like if spiritual growth only happened by hearing a sermon and sitting down and leaving, I feel like that's like the gathering point for us as a congregation, as a body, but it doesn't necessarily give us the application. Now, I don't want to steal Heather's. I asked Heather to speak about this very thing. Spiritual growth happens in the context of the community. That's God's idea. But how does it work? Why does it work that way? And why do we believe so strongly that community, not just sitting in rows, but sitting in circles, which often happens in some sort of group, is crucial in terms of our spiritual growth. So I'm going to ask Heather to speak. Many of you know Heather is an ordained minister. I don't have to come up here and give you her resume, but she is our group's pastor. This is her specialty, and so she's going to take it from here. Would you welcome my wife?
Howdy. All right. So I have a question. We're going to do something interactive here. I'm going to sing a line of a song to see if maybe you can finish the line. Sometimes you want to go. Good job. And they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can. Troubles are all the same. Now you have to finish. You want to go where everybody knows your name. Da, 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 da. We're not talking about Cheers. Don't worry. At all. We're not talking about that. But we're talking about community. And community, a place of belonging. It's not just a church concept, not just our idea. We didn't coin that phrase. All throughout the world, people talk about community. Starbucks talks about community. Starbucks, before they had QR codes and all those kinds of things, there used to be these little cards called employment cards, and they would advertise ways for you to get a job at Starbucks. On one side, it said, create community, make a difference in someone's day. That's a lot for coffee. On the other side, it explained it a little bit more in detail. When you work at Starbucks, you can make a difference in someone's day by creating an environment where neighbors and friends can get together while enjoying a great coffee experience. That's like expecting, it almost sounds like a church. It's a coffee place. They describe themselves even still as a different kind of company that not only celebrates coffee, but also connection. We are a neighborhood gathering place. We want to create environments, this is from their website, that connect people so meaningfully that their quality of life is changed. That's a hefty cup of coffee. And it works. There are Starbucks locations around the planet. When we lived in the Philippines, you better believe we paid a little bit extra so that we could have a little cup of home and have my peppermint mocha during Christmas, because that felt so home to me. It was community. They did it. But you know what's funny? They don't even have the best cup of coffee. Like, you can't walk in, congratulations, world's best cup of coffee. No, Consumer Reports did a study, a blind taste test, and McDonald's coffee beat Starbucks. The McCafe reigns supreme. But why do people keep going back to Starbucks? Because they've created this place of community. They know your name. When Jerome rolls up on a Sunday morning to get his coffee, they're like, morning, Jerome, you want your Pikes Peak or whatever he gets? Every time. If he misses a couple of weeks, they know. I mean, like, they know more than some church welcome teams know that you didn't get your morning cup of coffee, because they've trained people to create this environment where everybody knows your name, because we long for community. We long for something. And people will sacrifice what they know to taste good so that they can have that sense of community, so that they can have that sense of belonging, because we are a culture longing for community. We don't want to be alone. I'm not talking about introvert, extrovert. wanting to be by yourself sometimes. That's a totally different discussion. This is just, we want to be around people. But so many times we find ourselves alone, lonely, longing for more. But it's not that we're living isolated lives, right? Our lives are actually busier and busier and busier than they've ever been before. Kids on travel teams, they're in musicals, they're in debate club, my kids were literally 1 year involved in circus club. It was the coolest club ever. I was like, oh, this is really funny. They learned how to juggle. So cool. So yes, hopefully I'm not going to point fingers at who might be able to juggle, but he's on the front row. And I was like, this is one of I will take my kid gladly to this club because it makes him happy. It gave him friends at school. We talk to people as their students are entering high school, and we say, if your kid's involved in a sport or a club, they will have a place. They will know people when they walk into that building with 3,000 of their closest friends. That's a lot of people. And if you're coming in as a freshman and you feel like the tiniest little fry in this big, huge place, if you're on a team, you already have a place of belonging, right? Because we need that community. Otherwise, we feel alone. So having access to people is not the issue. We live and work with lots of people, but we find ourselves missing out on meaningful relationships. Not just casual, hey, hi. Because sometimes you can go somewhere like Starbucks where they know your name. They don't know you. They know what you like in your coffee. But they don't know you. They don't know what you're going through. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know how you got there. They probably don't even know the kind of car that you drive. They just know your order. You pull up, they hear your voice, and they're like, oh, good morning. They hear your order and go, oh, this must be Jerome. It's 5:45 on a Sunday morning. Nobody else is out getting coffee. Just him. But more than just community, we crave relationships. And God set it up that way. So I would like to take us all the way back to the beginning this morning. To the very beginning. Don't worry, I won't read all of the beginning. In Genesis chapter 1, if you want to turn there, flip there, click there, however you get there, we're going to go back to the beginning, where we read this incredible account. If you haven't read the creation account in a while, I really encourage you to go back and reread it, because it really is phenomenal to read about God's creativity and his desire for this world to come to life. I love it. It's beautiful. Find a kid's book on it, because they use some really great language in there, and there's pictures, and it's really fun. I read one book to our kids, Dinky the Dinosaur, and he tells you about how the world began, and I could probably tell you the whole book because I've read it at least 150 times between the 4 children. So read the story. But throughout the creation account, this beautiful description of all that God is doing, there's this phrase that's repeated over and over and over again. It's repeated 6 times. And many times in Scripture, when something's repeated, we're supposed to remember that. Day 1, light is created. God saw that it was good. Good job. Congratulations. Day 2, the sky was created. God saw that it was land and water. On day 3 were separated, and plants and trees created, and God saw that it was the sun, the moon. On day 4, sun, moon, stars were created, and God saw that it was. On day 5, the creatures of the air and the sea were created, and God saw that it was. You guys are getting good at this. On day 6, the land animals were created, and God saw that it was. He was very pleased with all that was happening. Then he tops it all off with this big ta-da moment. Let us create man in our image. And God saw that it was very good. And then we get to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is where we kind of like deep dive into the moment of when God said, let us create man in our image. But we see something unexpected happen here. After God goes into detail about what he wants man to do, he makes a different declaration. So we're going to look at Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 to 18. In verse 15, he says, the Lord God placed the man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. But the Lord God warned him, You may freely eat the fruit of every tree in the garden, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat its fruit, you are sure to die." Then the Lord God said, "It's not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him." It is not good. That's quite a different declaration. And you've probably heard this verse in light of marriage and the description of the marriage relationship, as you should. This is absolutely within context, but I think it goes deeper than that. And so do a lot of other really smart people who've written lots of books about this verse. This goes deeper. The Kaufman's commentary says it this way: "Man in the state of being alone is incomplete, unfulfilled, and lacking in much that he was created to be. We were designed for something much more than just being alone." In 2019, there was a survey of the quote, "Survey of Americans." That's literally what the survey is called. 58% of people surveyed said they felt like no one in their lives actually knew them well. In 2021, American Perspective survey showed that Americans are reporting fewer and fewer close friendships than ever before, no matter your age, your gender, your employment status, or your location. People are reporting that they don't really have true friends. They're growing weary. According to these reports, people are growing weary of going at life alone. So maybe Starbucks just isn't hitting it right. Author John Ortberg points out something interesting about this that I knew, but it was a good aha moment. God says it is not good for man to be alone. They are in the garden. There has been no disobedience, no sin, no anything that has interrupted this. He's in a place of perfection. He walks in the cool of the day with God and chit-chats about life. I mean, that's pretty cool. So it's not that Adam has done anything wrong. It's that God says, "I have created you in my image, and you are not meant to be alone." I think that's really good to hear, because sometimes we think that us needing somebody else means that we're lacking in something spiritually. We think, "Oh, I must not be close enough to Jesus because I think I need other people in my life." It's actually the way you were designed and the way that you were created. Sometimes in church circles, when people feel lonely, we tell them, don't expect too much from human relationships, because we all have a God-sized hole in our heart that only He can fill, which is true. But God also made us with a human-shaped void in our hearts that only another human fill, that He won't fill. It's not that He can't, it's that He won't. Because we were created in His image. In His image to be in relationship. No substitute will fill this need in you for human relationship. Not money, not achievement, not the next raise at your job, the next promotion, not another good book, not God Himself. Even though this man was in a state of sinless perfection, he was alone, and it was not good. We need both the God-shaped peace and the human-shaped peace in our lives. Otherwise, we're missing out and we're going it alone. And I know that we can probably all agree with God on this to say, it's not good to be alone. It kind of stinks to go through life solo, to not have that extra voice in your life. And again, I'm not talking about introvert, extrovert. I'm talking about going through life isolated. And if you get nothing else today, I want you to hear that we are made for meaningful relationship. Outside of relationship, we can never truly be who we were created to be. God created us to need each other. These relationships, they're the laboratory where we work out what we're learning. It's the tool that God uses to teach us about Himself, and it's where the application of information does transformation in our lives. Because we can learn a whole lot about grace and about having patience with people and forgiveness, but to learn about forgiveness, there has to be something to forgive. To learn about grace, there has to be a reason for grace. There has to be a reason to love, to to learn all of these lessons that we read about, that we hear about on a Sunday morning, that we read in our quiet time alone with God. We have these aha moments, and then God says, good, now go be with people and fine-tune that, because you're not going to learn patience sitting in your chair reading the Bible. I learn patience when I walk out the door of my bedroom with, Mama, Mama, Mom, 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 where's this? Mom, where's that? Mom, did you know what this? Mom, I've got this tomorrow. Mom, I have to make tostones tomorrow for school for a project. It's a huge project, and I haven't fried any plantains yet. Those are the times when we learn patience and how to deal with the messiness of life. And it's more than just our children. Sometimes it happens when we walk in the doors of this building, because God created us to need each other. God created us to regularly be together so that we can challenge each other, encourage one another, remind each other of who God is and who we are in Christ, to try our patience, to give us opportunities to show grace and to forgive. And as Pastor Jerome said, life is messy. Relationships are messy. But that doesn't mean we go hide away in our room and just read about God and we get all of the knowledge to hold to ourselves, because the knowledge hasn't really been applied if we haven't really had that laboratory experience. I don't know if anyone's ever taken a science class, but many times the higher up you go in science, you have a science class and then you have the lab where they make you prove what you've actually learned. And it gets messy and gross and you have to cut things open. So, if we are made for meaningful relationship and that outside of relationship we can never truly be who we were created to be, what should we do about this? The first thing that I would say to you is be intentional about the relationships that God has already given you. Yes, I'm going to talk about life groups. Yes, I'm going to talk about different things. But I know that you guys already have relationships. You already know somebody. God has put people in your life, whether it's family, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's your coworker, whether it's the person you sit next to and worship with every single week that maybe you've actually never learned their name. Be intentional about feeding the relationships that God has already put in your path. If you look through the New Testament, every single book has verbiage in there, phrases that tell us to do this life together. Encourage one another, sing together, teach one another, walk this life together, run the race together. There's actually this really cool thing that the English language doesn't really have unless you're from the South. If you're from the South, you know the word y'all. Y'all is plural. And did you know that that's actually you all is a proper, I was very happy because I say this all the time, it is a proper part of language to have an inclusive y'all. There's also an inclusive, exclusive we. In English, we speak a tonal language. So we know when we say, we're going to go to dinner. In other languages, they have, we're going to go to dinner, or we're going to go to dinner. Jerome and I, in English, we will preface it and be like, Jerome and I will go to dinner. But in other languages, they have we, y'all. We don't have that. So I think sometimes we miss out when we read some of these verses that have y'all in them. Because sometimes we should be reading, y'all need to be singing together. Y'all need to teach each other. Because that's you all together. That's not just you need to be singing together. It would make no sense if I said, Jackie, you need to be singing together. With who? Martha, you need to be encouraging you. It's a group activity, this whole thing. Paul writes letters to churches because from the very beginning, it's been a group. It's a group project. It's always been a group project. So, in light of it being a group project, be intentional about the relationships that God has given you. Feed those. Don't just go home and leave work and finally close the garage door and sit there by yourself and go, it is about time. That's okay to do, but if that is what you do every single day, you're kind of missing out. because there's a world out there. There's a world outside your window. And the next thing that I would encourage you to do is be open to the new relationships that God may have for you. Be open to the fact, even if you're an introvert. I have a couple of those in my house. I am not an introvert, if you don't know. I'm a people person, but I have a child in my house. I have two of them. They are not. And they would love nothing more than to just enjoy the solitude of life. They do enjoy people, and you can tell when they've had enough, because all of a sudden they're just sitting on the other side of the room like, can all the people go away? They love people, but they really just, after a while, need those people to go. And that's totally fine, because that's how God created him. However, he cannot spend all of his life in seclusion. She cannot spend all of her life in conclusion. Now you know. Because that's not how we're created to be. Because too much being alone can actually cause health problems. It causes anxiety to rise. It can increase your risk of stroke. Isolation can increase your risk of health problems. This is why, because we're not created to be alone. It's in our DNA. It's in our who we're created to be. So be intentional about allowing people into your life. Be okay with meeting new people. Our life group last summer did a study through Write Down Media, and it was called The Art of Neighboring, or neighborliness, or some neighbor word that I hadn't known before. And it was all about not making friends to win people to Jesus, because that's a little subversive. That's a bait and switch. Not that. It was about get to know the people around you, because we're not made to do it alone. So there was a challenge within it, and I said, I don't really know all my neighbors. Like, I know a neighbor and another neighbor. And so I may be an extrovert, but I also am not the best at, like, walking up to people I don't know. And so I walked across the street, and I rang a doorbell, and I was like, hi, I'm your neighbor. And it probably sounded that ridiculous. And it was great. They didn't even speak English. It was there was a lot lost in translation. But I realized I should probably have something like to do with my neighbors. So we had 4th of July, and we invited all of our neighbors. And I was like, hey, let's call it a block party. I don't know how to do block parties because I'm not in Maya's amazing neighborhood where they throw parties like every weekend. They really are a cool neighborhood. And I was like, I want that cool neighborhood. I want to know. I want to look across my, fence and know people. And so I started meeting people. And I'm really excited to tell you guys that I now know 6 different neighbors. Yes. I'm very proud of myself. And I want to encourage you guys, go meet a neighbor, because houses are now being designed without front porches. Front porches used to be the social hubs, right? You would sit on your front porch, and everybody knows the grandma who would sit on the front porch, and she knew what you were doing, and you could never get away with anything because she'd tell your mama. I got told on, y'all. We don't have as much of those anymore. Everything's in the backyard behind privacy fences so that we can have an extension of our living room, but we don't hang out with our neighbors. Get to know your neighbors. Let somebody new into your life. And will it be scary? Yes, because it's something new. I'm not saying that you have to be like BFFs with your neighbor. I'm not saying that you have to let the lady at the grocery store into all of the craziness of your life. You can if you want to. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be open to the fact that God might bring new people into your life. And in light of that, we're launching life groups. Well, we're launching groups. So this year, in light of the fact that we've got different types of relationships in our lives, we have different groups. So I'm going to read off some of these so that they can, stand up, wave, so that you can see who they are in person. We have the group Bolt. I have no idea what that name is about, but if you look back in the sound booth, that's Brian Kirchville. He and his wife, Kim, they're going to be leading a life group every other Sunday at 6 p.m., and they're studying living for Christ in the workplace. This is a fantastic study. Yeah, oh, by the way, maybe you would want to look at your papers that you had on your chair. If you don't have any, there's some at these tables, or you can share with a neighbor. Maybe get to know them, ask them their name. I don't know. So that's every other Sunday. Also every other Sunday at 4 p.m., we've got the fun folks with Jane and Paul Catlin. No, you have to stand up. People can't see you. So that's Paul and Jane Catlin. They're going to be studying If with Mark Batterson and how to not live life in the what ifs. We have Getting Through Life Together with Jackie and Dustin Campins here on the front row. That's them. They're going to be studying How to Face Life's Challenges with Stephen Foster. That's every other Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Maya Hinkle is doing a writing group for maybe people who, hi Maya, this is going to be on Sundays. And this is for people who maybe don't want to sit and talk about everything, but they want to learn how to write it all out. Maybe you've always wanted to be a writer and you don't know how to do that. She's your lady. She's an amazing writer. We've got Ladies' Night Out with Charlotte Gaddy. That's going to be on Friday nights, and they're going to be studying the book of Ruth. And ladies, if you've always wanted to do the Bible study here at church with the women, but you don't have the time for all that homework, we've created a group for you because we've heard you, and now we understand that not everybody's in the stage of life where they can do a lot of homework every single night. So that group's for you. We've got the Kirches with Brad and Heather. Right now it's just Brad. That's every other Thursday night, and they're studying Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen. And then we have Jordan and Abby V back here. They're going to be doing a young adults brunch on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. with a rotation through local favorite restaurants. I might become a young adult because it sounds like fun. I actually want to join every one of these groups because they all sound like really fun. But that one's going to be a sermon recap. And this is a wonderful way for our young adults to find some community and people to pour into their lives. Then we're going to have study groups. Those are our home life groups. This is the study groups that we have going on. We have the adult Sunday school class on Sunday mornings. And the Ginthers are over here. Can you stand and wave? I know nobody wants to actually do the standing part. But they are in there every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and they're getting ready to start the books of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, which I find very interesting because there was no collaboration on this, but the women's Bible study on Tuesday mornings. Where's Nikki? Nikki's back there in the back, and she is going to be, good morning, Nikki. She is going to be leading the ladies' Bible study, and they are studying Abide by Jen Wilkin, which covers 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. I think God's trying to send a message. The men's breakfast study. That is going to be every other Saturday morning with Pat Carter and Pastor John Knack. And they are going to be studying the power of the Holy Spirit's names with Dr. Tony Evans. And they make a really good breakfast. I've gotten here after breakfast before to get leftovers. Actually, because I'm here working and they just happen to say, you really need to eat this. And it's really delicious. We will also be having Financial Peace University Sundays at 8:45 a.m. with Brad Kirchville again, because we want to offer a way for you to attack your finances and to live like no one else so that you can live like no one else. Then if you flip that page, we've got our serve groups. We wanted to highlight these because we know that not everybody is ready to go sit in somebody's living room and divulge what's going on in their life or to go through a study, and they're just not ready for that level of intimacy with somebody yet, or maybe they're not available to do any of these study groups. But you know what? Maybe they have a Friday evening when they can help with Dinners on Us. We've got Lorana and Jane Catlin and Pastor Angela, but she's with kids. Every Friday night, they have rotating teams of people who make dinner and give it away to people. Before COVID, it was just once a month. During COVID, God said, you need to do this every week. And we've kept going. And it's unbelievable. And we take time to pray with people. And there are people who know us now. We've become Starbucks. We know their names. They know our names. We're praying with them. They're praying for you guys as well. It's one of the coolest things. People throughout this city know us as, oh, you're that dinner church. Yes, we are. Because we have teams of people who come together and they meet in the kitchen and they make food and they pray and they are part of each other's lives. I highly recommend joining that team. We have another serve team with Care Portal, and Charlotte Gaddy heads that up along with a couple of other people. And Care Portal it's a technology platform that connects you with kids in needs. And what all that means is we're connected with the Division of Family Children Services. It's called something different in Missouri. We connect with DCS here, and they're sharing needs that people have whose kids are either going into foster care, or they are currently in foster care, or they are coming out of foster care. We're helping families. It's been an amazing fall into the winter. We've been able to help 13. We've met 13 needs with a lot of kids. We've been able to give beds to kids who have never had beds. And last week, I think, they were giving a bed to this family, a grandma who all of a sudden has her 5 grandchildren. And the little girl said, "I get this bed all to myself?" And they said, yeah. She went screaming to her grandma, "Grandma, I get a bed for me." She's 10 years old. She's 10 years old, and she's just now getting a bed to herself, and she's so excited. It's because we have teams of people who are gathering stuff, and everything that we're getting is stuff that people are giving away. So all over Facebook, we've got these pages where people are like, "Hey, I don't need this anymore. Who needs this?" They're giving pages, and we're able to say, "Hey, I've got a foster family who needs that." Cool. And we've been able to give away beds, mattresses, sheets, blankets, toys at Christmas time for kids who have never had a Christmas. Oh my goodness, it's one of my favorite things to serve on is Care Portal. If you would like to be part of that team, we need drivers. We need people who can assemble a bunk bed. Because not all of us know how to assemble bunk beds. I now know how to assemble a bunk bed. I've learned a lot. But we have a place for you in these serve teams. And actually, Pastor Jerome is going to come up because we now have another serve team that I'm very excited about. But I don't get to talk about that one. It's choir. It's a choir. Okay, I stole his thunder.
Spoiler alert. We went probably the first Christmas and many Christmases without a choir. And, we haven't had a choir for a couple Easters. And it's been one of those things where it's been a desire for us. This church has a rich history of people gathering together to sing. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, God has his church. He takes care of his church, and he provides. And something that we had always wished and hoped and prayed about, but then really believe that Lord has brought us someone to direct our choir. So I'm going to ask Barry LeBlanc to come up. I have Barry's resume if y'all want to see. I'm not going to sing for some random dude. It's right here. The guy's got a master's degree in music from the University of Georgia. He's currently an instructor and choir director at the Classic Academy in Indianapolis, Indiana, adjunct faculty at Ivy Tech Community College in Noblesville. So, this guy knows a thing or two about music. And so, super excited. We're going to launch a choir. They're going to begin practicing here pretty soon in time for the February 1st. I'll let him speak. I'm going to give him the mic. I'm going to let Barry introduce himself, but just excited about Palm Sunday and Easter and all that. So,
thank you, Pastor Jerome. So let me just identify my wife over here, Cindy. We've been coming here for several weeks, couple months, and at a lunch with Pastor Jerome back in December, we were just chatting, getting to know one another, and he said something about choir, and I said, "Did you say choir?" And so having not been in a church with a choir for, I was just counting 9 years, I am very excited about coming to a church that not only wants a choir, but has such a substantial tradition of choir and a foundation on which to build. When Heather was talking about, "Oh, you're the church that serves dinners," I would like this also to be, "Oh, you're the church that has that awesome choir." So, yes, we are starting February 1st, starting early. For one thing, we will not meet when we have the business meeting. And also, we will target toward Palm Sunday, so we're not going to target or to schedule necessarily all the way into April, at least not this first time around. But I just wonder, how many of you have ever sung in a church choir or high school choir? Raise your hand. Raise them up. I'll give you, okay, come on, everybody. All right, so you know what you need to do, right? You know where to sign up. And this will be just an exciting experience for us. I love to make choir fun. My wife will tell you that I do a pretty good job of that. We will use print music, but that doesn't mean that you have to know how to read music. There'll be plenty of people. In fact, maybe you'd like to learn how to read music, and that will happen in choir. It happens in my choirs at the academy, where I just had second graders come out of being in a K1 choir, and they came, all 36 of them came into that 80-voice second to fifth grade choir that first day of choir this past August, and they were looking at their binders and notes, but by the time they get into fifth grade, they know how to read, and that's just with kids, and you'll pick it up even faster if you ever have that desire. I also say, I know that you might have other groups that you want to be in, and I would rather have you, even if it's just for some of the time, if you're a busy person. So just come out. If you don't like it, we'll give you your money back, right? We'll give you. If you don't like it, you get a refund. But would love to have you out on Wednesday night, February 1st. Looking forward to singing with you and also getting to know all of you better. Thank you, Pastor Jerome.
The band's going to come up, and we're going to close in a song of kind of dedication. This whole idea of we were created to be connected, and I think it's important. Once again, and I kept saying this. I was in Heather's ear all day yesterday and this morning. Like, hey, we're not in the business of making people's friendships. Like, that's y'all's business. We're creating opportunities so that we can grow as Christians with one another. Notice her point was careful. It was like meaningful relationships. Meaningful relationships don't always look the same. But they're meaningful, and they point us towards God, and they help us grow. My wife was gracious when she said she learned patience with our children. She's learned patience elsewhere too. I'm an agent of God to bring patience in her life. Would you stand with me? I want to read where we finished off last week. The same prayer that Jesus prayed in John chapter 17. He tells them he's leaving them, and he says, but abide in me. He tells them he's leaving them, and I'm giving you the Holy Spirit. I'm sending you into this world. And he prays this for his disciples. But in the middle of his prayer, he goes, I'm not just praying it for these disciples. I'm praying for all who believe. That includes us. And then we're going to sing this song, kind of dedication. Lord, would we indeed cherish what you've given us and be open-handed and open to what you may give us in terms of other people and relationships. Whether it's in the church walls or outside the church walls, I don't think that was the case here. This is not about building a program. It's about building our faith, building who we are in Christ, and we create opportunities. But let me read you what Jesus prays in John chapter 17. They, speaking of his disciples, do not belong to this world any more than I do. They have a better home. Make them holy by your truth. Teach them your word, which is truth. Just as you sent me into the world, I am sending them into the world. And I give them as a holy sacrifice. I give myself as a holy sacrifice for them so they may be made holy by your truth. I'm not praying only for these disciples who were standing there with them, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message, and that's us. I pray that they will be one, just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, I am in you, and may they be in us so that the world will believe you sent me. I have given them the glory you gave me, so they may be one as we are one. I am in them, and you are in me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. Would you sing this song?